I'm joined here now with author Gregory Eric Phillips. Now, for our viewers who may not know too much about you, I'll just get you to go a little bit into your background.
So I'm the author of A Season in Lights. This is my latest novel, along with two other novels that came prior. And this novel is based on a story about a dancer and a piano player working off Broadway in New York City, which is something that's in my background. I'm also both a dancer and a piano player, and have done a little bit of performing off Broadway myself in New York. I currently live in Seattle, Washington. So it was a very personal book for me to write, and I was able to put a lot of my own sort of experiences in there. And so that was just a really fun project.
And speaking of your book, A Season in Lights, it recently got awarded Book of the Year from the Right Review. But just what did it mean to you to see that your book was being praised and recognized?
So that was actually the second major award that it's won. Earlier in 2021, it won the grand prize in the Somerset Awards, and then it just last week, or maybe even this week, just a few days ago, was named the Book of the Year by the Right Review. When something like that happens to me as an artist, that's just so incredibly validating. Because when you create art, there's some vulnerability that goes into that too, because you put your soul into your book, and you don't know how it's going to be received. You don't know if readers are going to like it, or if reviewers are going to accept what you had to say. And so those sorts of awards, or just nice reviews from readers as well, it just goes a long way to me as an artist to validate what I poured my heart into.
Now, speaking of the background of this book does talk about two different pandemics. So, just why did you think it was so important to talk about this? Because it is still affecting us all, but it may be an angle that people may not know about.
Yeah, great question. So I had completed the book, a version of the book, long before COVID was something we were aware of, well, before it existed. And the book has sort of two narratives. One is in present day New York City, one is in the 1980s in New York City. And the 1980s section touches on the AIDS crisis and how that especially affected the artistic community. So then the book was done, and March 2020 happens. Broadway is shut down. The pandemic is in full force. And as a performing artist myself, my heart just broke for so many friends I know, both in Seattle and New York City, whose careers were in some cases ended by the pandemic. That it changes everything for them, and their entire identities are up in the air. So I thought, wow, that's something I'd really like to explore in fiction. And then the light bulb moment was, I have this manuscript that's done about performing artists in New York City. So I wrote a complete new final third of the book. And I wrote it literally as events were playing out in March of 2020, which was a very unique experience as an author, because you're usually writing about things in the past. So I feel like then the final version of the book contains a lot of that uncertainty that we all felt at the beginning of the pandemic, because the characters have no idea what's going to happen, and neither did I. So, and then the parallels between COVID today and AIDS in the 1980s was not an intentional thing when I started out writing it. It happened, and it was organic. And I think it brought this book to a higher level than it would have been if I published it before the pandemic.
Yeah, I really think this is just a great story to tell. And, since we still are in those uncertain times, is there anything you would want readers to take away from your book?
First, seeing how it affects other people that you may not understand. There's a scene toward the end of the book where the piano player kind of goes off on what's happening, because to treat the pandemic with what we do collectively as a society, and then to see how it affects these individuals, I think that's something that I really wanted to to show in this book, because it affects all individuals in a different way. But also, I feel like there's a lot of hope in the ending, even though it's a dark time. And that's ultimately what I want to convey with this, with all of my novels, is just the hope in the human spirit to rise above these tragedies.
If anyone is looking to read the book or just find out more about you, where should they go?
My website is GregoryErichPhillips.com. And Erich is spelled E-R-I-C-H. So you have to make sure that that's right. You can also just search for a Season in Lights on Amazon or your local bookstore. It's available pretty much wherever books are sold. The audiobook just came out as well. So it's available through all those channels. You can also find me on Facebook. Again, it's GregoryErichPhillips.com, and I'll put, or it's Facebook, Gregory Erich Phillips. So I'll put my updates there as well.
Thank you so much for your time today, Gregory.
Yeah, thank you so much.